In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to use the Shading Effects Editor, and we're going to talk about the Shading and Lighting tab, where we also can adjust the lighting itself, of course, and the surface material. These have dramatic effects on the effects themselves. Now I'll just scroll over here and we'll just type in a letter, type in an A. I'll zoom in on that so we've got plenty of, we can actually see it. And I'll just apply a preset. Now you can apply a preset from this flyout here, the Special Effects and Shading flyout, and here you see presets. So if we click on that, the presets come up. These presets are all live and interactive, and they can be applied to any text or object. I'll apply, say, let's see a bright gold one with a bit of shape to it. This one will do, accept. Okay, so we can see we've got a nice bright shape here with an effect on it. This letter A here. Now to bring up the Shading Effects Editor is quite easy. There's several ways to do it. You can go up to the Effects menu, Shading Tools up here, so you just click on that. You can come down to the flyout and click on Shading Tools there. Or you can click on this button here, which brings us some more buttons and some more controls, and you can click on the Shading Tools here. And also up here, as usual in VinylMaster, depending on what you're doing in the drawing area, and its context, you will see the tools relevant to that in the second row. So we'll click on Shading Tools there. And as you can see, we come up with a Shading and Lighting tab to begin with. Now we're interested in this tab. We've got our lighting tools here, our light sources, our surface material, and some other tools over here. This particular Shading Effects Editor can be moved in out of the way up here like that, and you can roll it up and put it out of the way. You can roll it down and work with it. The great thing with the Shading Effects Editor is that what you see or what you're doing in these tools here, you can see them applied live to the job you're working on. Okay, so if I change, for example, the lighting, you'll see it actually changing live on the actual effect that we're working with, and that's quite an advantage. I can bring that down, and you can see clearly that that has quite an effect by bringing that down. So the Shading Effects Editor, when you're doing special effects, you should position it where it's in out of your way, so to speak, and then work on your effect, and you can see everything happening in front of you as you do it, rather than having to type in a value and click accept and see what the results are. Okay, so in this particular job here, we've got these lighting tools here. Now the light source and the lighting tools can have a dramatic influence on the look of the effect. Now to show that more clearly, let's just go to highlights here, and we've got this A without a reflection, so we can actually see these highlights a little bit more clearly. And as I move these around, you can see the closer I get to the center, where we get full light, you have this effect. So the lighting tools, have an enormous effect on the look of the effect, and you can really change the way it appears by moving these around. Also, you can adjust the actual their intensity, so you can bring them right down so that they have less effect and they shade the glyph or the object you're working with differently, as you can see in this effect here. And if I turn one of these off and only work with one of them, sorry, this one here, you can see that you can really set where you want your lighting to come from and how it affects the particular job at hand. And of course, this all depends on what you're working with. But the point is that if you spend some time experimenting with the lighting tools, you'll quickly learn how these affect different jobs, and clearly if you change the other things like the profile here and go back to shading, again, this really affects what you see on the screen and how the effect looks. You can also change these light sources numerically by clicking in places like this, and you can see it spins the actual position around, and you can adjust its elevation, the light's elevation, so you can go right on the edge like that to right up to full light like that. So that's the lighting tools. Now if we're going to talk about the surface material, we're going to talk about gloss and highlight strength. These two work directly with each other and are completely related to each other. So if we just put our lights in a fairly standard position, and what we might do is just put our bevel to a normal bevel, or to a rounded bevel I should say. Now the gloss value, if I bring that down, you'll see that this becomes very dull all of a sudden. It looks like a satin effect. And if I push my highlight strength up, it sort of lightens the job up but it doesn't actually, you can't see these highlights. So I need to actually bring up my gloss value to bring up these highlights. And if I bring these highlights right up, the higher I go, the more sharp and intense they become, and therefore the more glossy the actual material appears to be. I can go up to a maximum of 200%, and that's full gloss like that. That's as glossy as you're going to get it, so it looks like it's actually covered in some water or something, or it's a high gloss plastic, let's say. And of course you can always come along, click off it, click on the job, and that way it's selected as text, and you can change its color. So we can make it, say, a red color in this example. So again, color also makes an enormous difference to what something looks like. So that's the gloss value and the highlight strength, and together they can make something go from a very satin, dull sort of look to an incredibly bright and highlighted gloss look. Another important tool is the surface brightness. At the moment it's set to 50%. If I set that right down, you'll see that the color almost goes completely out of the object, and that it's the actual intensity of the brightness of the job is very little. If I bring that right up, it now looks like there's a spotlight on it. It's much, much brighter. So you can significantly influence the look of the effect, its saturation, so to speak, by adjusting the surface brightness. And again, it's a matter of experimenting with that to see how this affects your particular job, but here I'm just showing you how it affects this particular one. Diffuse shading is all about the ambient light. If I bring that right down, there's very little ambient light. If I bring that down, you can see that there isn't much going on here. Now, if, for example, I bring the diffuse shading right up, I've now got full ambient light, but because I have low surface brightness, it doesn't really indicate that. So if I set that to 50%, it's a very subtle thing, diffuse shading, the ambient light, and it will affect greatly depending on what colors you're working with. For example, if I make this a blue color, it may have a greater effect. And you can see that it's slightly changing that look. So diffuse shading is a more subtle effect. Surface brightness makes a big difference, as you can see in this blue, versus having none at all, from dark blue to very bright blue. So with gloss and highlight, you can make the actual surface material look very glossy. Surface brightness can make the entire object look very bright, and diffuse shading has a slight effect on the ambient light. Now these tools down here, shade vector effects, what that really means is that if you apply a vector effect to this particular object here, or this piece of text, for example, I'll just move that right to the corner there. If I want to, say, put a little outline around this, I might click on the outline tool, and I've got this, you can see it here. I'll need to move that down. I'll just zoom out a little bit, make that a little bit narrower, and we'll zoom back into it. And what I will do is I'll apply a reflection to this. So I'll go here to reflective, and you can see the reflections actually going on to the outline effect. The vector effect I've applied to this is actually going not only just onto the character of the A here, it's also going onto its outline. And you can see there that the reflection's really coming in. So shade vector effects, when it's checked, means that the effects that are being applied as vectors to the actual main object actually also get shaded as well. The preview quality, that's really all about how much resources are thrown at drawing an object. If you set it too high, you're using more resources to draw the object. It's essentially what you're doing. And that's fine if you've got a very fast computer. If you've got a computer which is a little bit older, it doesn't have quite as much memory as you'd like, or the processor, it's only got, say, one CPU, you're far better off having this set to normal. But when you go to render the job or rip it out, or send it as artwork to a PDF file and the like, you may set this to high. That's when you would do that. So I think I've covered most of this. We've got the lighting, we've gone over that in the surface material. So that will give you a good rundown on how to adjust these settings. I suggest that you spend some time experimenting with these tools, trying them out, applying presets to your jobs, and seeing how these affect. I mean, obviously, every time you do this, you'll get a very different effect. If I go to something like this, and experiment and play around with it, you can really create some quite wonderful effects. And you know, you can create them all yourself from scratch using this tool, and it's just a matter of trying and seeing how the different tools affect your job. And that's the end of this lesson.